The memory of the trip was a lie. For 6 straight days, the backpacking journey was miserable. Cold rain soaked through every layer of clothing. Thick mud grabbed at your boots with each step, making a simple walk feel like a battle. You were exhausted, hungry, and just wanted it to be over. But when you think back on it now, you smile. You call it one of the best trips of your life. Why? Because you remember 2 things with perfect clarity. The stunning, breathtaking view from the mountain summit on day 5, and the incredible taste of that first warm meal in a dry restaurant after you finished. The peak and the end. This weird trick of the mind is what we call the Acorn effect. A tiny, powerful part of an experience, the acorn, grows in our memory to become a mighty oak. It completely overshadows the long, boring, or even painful parts that came before it. It becomes the whole story. Psychology has a formal name for this cognitive bias. It's called the peak-end rule. It states that our memory of an event isn't an average of how we felt the whole time. Instead, our memory is almost entirely based on just 2 moments, the most intense point, whether good or bad, and the very end. This isn't just a fun idea. It's been proven in labs. Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman conducted a famous, slightly cruel experiment to show how it works. He had people put one hand into uncomfortably cold water for 60 seconds straight. It was a pretty unpleasant experience. Then, he had them do it again with their other hand. This time, they held it in the same cold water for 60 seconds, but then they had to keep it in for an extra 30 seconds. During that extra half minute, the water was made just a tiny bit warmer, though still uncomfortably cold. So you have 2 options: a short, painful experience, or a long, painful experience that ends slightly less painfully. When Kahneman asked the participants which of the 2 trials they would rather repeat, the result was shocking. A huge majority chose the longer 90-second trial. They willingly chose more total pain. Why would anyone do that? Because their memory wasn't keeping a running tally of suffering. It was telling a story. And the story of the second trial had a better ending. This reveals everything. Your memory didn't care that they suffered for an extra 30 seconds. All it cared about was the peak moment of pain and the final feeling at the very end. Because the end was slightly less awful, the entire memory of the longer event became preferable. This experiment uncovers one of the most important ideas in modern psychology, a distinction you've likely never heard of, but that runs your entire life. It proves that inside your mind, you are not a single person. There are 2 different beings living in your head. There is the experiencing self, and there is the remembering self. And most of the time, they want completely different things. This is the central, powerful key to understanding why we make the choices we do. Let's break this down. Think of your mind as having 2 different people living inside it. First, there is the experiencing self. This is the doer. It lives completely in the present moment. It's the part of you that feels the sting of cold water second by second. It feels the boredom of a long meeting or the simple joy of a sunset. It lives through millions of tiny, fleeting moments, but it has no voice. Then there is the remembering self. This is the storyteller. It's the part of you that gets asked, "How was your vacation?" It doesn't review every single second of the trip. Instead, it quickly scans the timeline, grabs the most intense moment and the very end, and writes a short story. This story becomes the official memory. It's the only part that speaks for you. The experiencing self lives life. The remembering self keeps the score. The doer might go through 3 hours of discomfort, but the storyteller can summarize it as a fantastic experience if the peak was thrilling and the end was pleasant. This is the gap where our reality gets rewritten. The storyteller is a terrible, biased historian, but it's the only one we listen to. This brings us to a strange and powerful truth about our daily lives. The remembering self is a tyrant. It holds all the power when making future decisions. and it almost completely ignores the happiness or suffering of your experiencing self. It doesn't care about the long, boring hours. It only cares about the story. This is why you might choose to go on a grueling, multi-day hike. For your experiencing self, it can be pure misery. Aching muscles, bug bites, cold nights. But the remembering self anticipates the story. It knows it will get a spectacular view from the summit, the peak, and the feeling of triumph at the finish line, the end. That's a great story, so it forces the experiencing self to endure the suffering. This leads to the most important insight of all. If the storyteller is the one in charge, you can become the director of the story. You can consciously design your experiences to create better memories for your future self. You can hack your own mind to make life feel better. This isn't about lying to yourself or creating false memories. It's about strategically working with your brain's own system. It's about understanding the rules of memory and using them to your advantage. You are simply giving your remembering self better material to work with to write a more positive story. Think about building a difficult habit, like exercising. The experiencing self often hates the middle of a workout. It's tiring and uncomfortable. Most of the experience is neutral or negative, but you can change the memory of it. The key is to focus on engineering a better peak and a better end. Maybe during the hardest part of the workout, you play your most powerful, motivating song. That creates an emotional peak. Then, crucially, you must design a great ending. Don't finish your run and immediately collapse in exhaustion. Instead, finish with a slow, calming, cool-down walk. Take a moment to feel proud. Have a refreshing drink you enjoy. This small, positive ritual becomes the end of the memory. The storyteller grabs the intense song and the pleasant cool-down, and the memory of the workout becomes far more positive, making you more likely to do it again. This is where the real power lies, not in just knowing about the two selves, but in using that knowledge to become an architect of your own happiness. You can intentionally design experiences so that your remembering self tells a better story. Think about a difficult habit, like exercise. Your experiencing self feels the burn and the exhaustion. If you just stop when you're tired, the end of that memory is negative. But what if you changed the ending? Don't just stop. End every workout with 5 minutes of your favorite stretch or a delicious protein shake you only allow yourself to have right after. The same logic works for studying. A long session can feel like a grind. The memory becomes one of struggle. Instead, end your study time by reviewing the single most interesting thing you learned, or close the book right after solving a problem that made you feel smart. You are deliberately creating a positive end for your memory to latch onto. Now to bigger life experiences. A vacation, for example. You could have 7 decent days, but if the last day is a stressful travel nightmare, your memory of the entire trip gets tainted. So, you design the end. Make the last day truly special. Plan a fantastic farewell dinner or one last memorable activity. That strong, positive finish will become the story of the whole vacation. This applies to long work projects too. After months of hard work, a project can just fizzle out, leaving the team feeling drained. The memory is just relief that it's over. But if you plan a specific endpoint, a celebration, a final presentation that highlights all the successes, you rewrite the story. The project is no longer remembered as a long slog, but as a shared victory. Understanding this peak-end rule isn't just a cool psychological trick. It is a fundamental shift in how you see your own life. It's the moment you realize that your life story is not a perfect video recording of what happened. It is a narrative, a story, and you have the power to shape that story. By consciously designing the peaks and, more importantly, the ends of your experiences, you become the author of your own past. You are not just a passenger living through events. You are the storyteller, choosing what they mean. This means your identity is something you can actively build. When you give your remembering self a better ending to an experience, you are literally crafting a stronger memory. You are choosing the bricks that will build the person you become tomorrow. This isn't about lying to yourself or ignoring pain. The pain was real, the struggle happened. But you can choose what the final chapter of that experience says. Does it end with the struggle? Or does it end with the lesson you learned, the strength you gained, or a moment of peace you deliberately created for yourself? Ultimately, you face a choice. You can be a passive audience to the movie of your life, letting the story be written by random chance. Or you can pick up the pen and consciously write a better ending.